Krishna Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Vishnu Bhagavan, Bhagavan Jai, Esi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Guru Guru Ganga Mai ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you again. I think I know most of you. To be on this holy dawn, it's auspicious. And I've been asked to speak tonight on the topic of Caitya Guru and Guru, Shastra and Sadhu. How they work together. So the Caitya Guru is the super soul in the heart. Parama Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridesha Jana Tishtati Brahmayan Sarva Bhutana Yantra Rudhani Maya. Krishna says he is the super soul. There's no difference between Krishna and the super soul. No difference between Krishna speaking to Arjuna and the super soul in the hearts of all living entities. Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. Super soul, Paramatma, is in the heart of every living entity. In his four-handed Narayan feature, Vishnu, and when Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, he's pictured with two arms. Sometimes he assumes four arms and is in the same lila as Krishna. Sometimes he exhibits four arms and sometimes he exhibits two arms, depending on the particular. When Krishna is present, all the different forms of the Lord, incarnations, are present with him. So, in the Krishna form, everything is, all the different incarnations are present. But there's no competition. For example, when Dhruva Maharaj was performing mystic yoga, Ashtanga yoga, or some kind of meditational yoga, and he was meditating on the form of the Lord in the heart. At one point the form of the Lord disappeared, and he opened his eyes, somewhat disturbed, and then he saw that Narayan had appeared before him on the outside. But there is actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually in the heart of the living entity's body, because in the material world there's super soul, but in the spiritual world, Paramatma feature is not required. Why does he come? Sarvasya chaham nidhi saniveshto mataksvatir gyana pohanam cha. For me, Krishna says, come remembrance, forgetfulness, knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. For the materialistic person or living entity, super soul is also guiding, but guiding according to his desire. Etamam prapajate tam taiva bhujanga. So a materialistic entity wants to fulfill his material desires, and super soul helps him. Although he helps him by giving him knowledge and remembrance of how to do things. How, for example, a little bird in the nest, baby bird, wants to fly, but he's not attended any flight school, but still, super soul teaches him how to maneuver, how to do the wings, how to move, and thus, with the help of super soul, he's able to fly. He knows where to fly. The other night I was in, I forget someplace, and there was a big tree. I was in Edinburgh. There's a big tree outside the window, and it was becoming almost dark, and there were some big birds sitting in the tree. They had come there for you could see that their day was finished. They weren't planning on going anywhere for the rest of the evening. How do they know that they're supposed to sleep up in the trees? Now, science would call it instinct. What does instinct mean? Some inexplicable inner intelligence, inner guidance. But who's that inner guidance coming from? Who is it? What kind of inner guidance is it? Is it the oracle? Is it the liver? Is it the blood flowing? Is it the air breathing? Is it the bones or skin or marrow? What is it? Something inside, but it's... Walt Disney would say, it's your conscience, let your conscience be your guide. What is the conscience? To know what a conscience is, we have to know what consciousness is. what's the higher self, lower self. All these things are baffling to those who are not familiar with teachings of Bhagavad Gita. They're confused about everything. So they come up with words that don't really explain it, but they can use the word to explain the phenomena that they don't understand, like instinct. Instinct is the super soul giving direction to the living entity, giving him intelligence. It is said that the intelligence is the form direction of the super soul. Everyone's getting some direction from super soul. Every living entity. But whether they're taking his best advice, that's questionable. Because also the Vedas say that the super soul is situated on a tree, like two birds on a tree. One bird is the individual soul, he's tasting the fruits. And the other bird is the super soul, his friend, who's waiting patiently for him to return and come back to the friendly relationship with the super soul. That's what he really wants. But he doesn't impose. And he's so kind that he travels with the living entity throughout his millions of lifetimes in the material world, waiting patiently for him to. And all the time that he's waiting, he's giving good advice, giving good instruction, but it's hard to hear the super soul, especially for a materialist, because he's too busy listening to his contaminated intelligence, his false ego, his hurricane mind, his raging senses are screaming, give me this, give me this. The mind is screaming, the intelligence is misdirected. The false ego is completely illusioned, thinking he's the body. And then the sense objects are also screaming. The advertisements, drink this, eat this, enjoy this. So, how can he hear the super soul? All this screaming static going on. Nor does he particularly want to hear the super soul, because super soul is telling him to cool off, to cool down the passions and get out of the darkness, tamasima jyotirgamaya, get out of the darkness, come to the light. But now he's become like an owl that closes his eyes and the sunshine, doesn't like the sun. So for the living entities who are not spiritually awakened, for them to connect with the super soul directly is not likely, it's difficult. At least for self-realization purposes. Otherwise Krishna could have told Arjuna, I'm situated in your heart, and you can just sit down and meditate on me in your heart, and you'll get all the directions, what to do. but rather he personally gave instructions because he was acting as the guru, the spiritual master. The guru is considered to be also the manifestation of Supersoul, the mercy manifestation of Supersoul, who appears on the outside. But the instructions, the message is the same. The message of the guru cannot be different than the message of the Supersoul. And similarly, the message of the Supersoul and the guru can't be different than the message of the Shastra, scriptures, or the Sadhus. Sadhus are the saintly persons who have realized the Shastras and who practice the Shastras. They are the living evidence, living proof. And they're the ones who can explain what the Shastra means. Otherwise, Tarko Pratishta Shruteyo Vibhinna Nasavrishya Yasya Matam Nabhinna Tarasya Tatam Nihitam Guhaya Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. Otherwise, different philosophers will have their opinions, different scriptures will appear to be contradictory. Different arguments are inconclusive. But the true religious principle is in the heart of the pure devotee, and therefore we should follow in the footsteps of the Mahajanas. Chaitanya Charitamrita says, in Kali Yuga there are no scriptural principles as such, no regulative principles, just the Vaishnavas and their instructions. That means that in Kali Yuga practically we're unable to follow the true Vedic instructions, just like who's a strict brahmachari, who's a strict sannyasi, who's a strict grihastha. Everything is corrupted. It's an ocean of faults. But the Vaishnavas are representatives of the Shastras and Krishna. So it's not that they're presenting something untrue, but they're presenting scriptural injunctions as they can be followed. Because they actually understand the real meaning of the Shastras, they're realized souls. Therefore, they're not compromising, but they're giving us the realization how to do it. When I first came to Krishna consciousness movement, I understood, and it had been explained to me by the devotees that Prabhupada was so merciful that he had come to the West and saved us. I had a hard time understanding that fully, because I was thinking that, well, wasn't it just his duty? Wasn't he just performing his duty? Therefore, why is it such an act of mercy? Wasn't he just doing his duty? So, yes, he's doing his duty, but doing his duty is a great act of mercy to actually carry out Krishna's instructions. Because Krishna is full of mercy, and one who carries out his instructions becomes an angel of mercy, becomes a carrier. Even if he's not very important himself, just like a wire, a lowly wire, a piece of wire is not worth very much. But when a lowly piece of wire is connected to a powerhouse, it carries the full energy of the powerhouse. It can light up buildings and give heat, so many things. Just a little wire. Not even very valuable. Krishna Shakti Vina Nahitara Pravartana. Unless one is empowered by Krishna, he cannot spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. This is Palam Pariciyate. Judge a tree by its fruit. If it gives good fruit, it's a good tree. It's connected. Therefore, one of the ways Bhaktivinoda Thakur has expressed that one can judge who's an advanced Vaishnava is how much of a touchstone he is, how he's able to transform the lives of people. People were astounded at Srila Prabhupada's potency to transform the lives of his followers. That's a test. Parvat Muni said to Narad, you're a Sparshamani, you're a touchstone, because he had transformed one hunter into becoming a Vaishnava. How many hunters did Prabhupada transform into Vaishnavas? Woman hunters, intoxication hunters, meat hunters, everything. So, the purports to Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada gave are, in one sense, non-different than the verses themselves, because they're explanation. The four Vedas are called Shruti, and the Puranas, Itihasas, they're called Smriti. Shruti means that which is heard, but that which is heard may not be understood. But Smriti means that which is remembered or that which is explained. It's an explanation. Therefore the Smriti, in one sense, is more important, because Bhagavad Gita, the verses, were present in 644 English translations before Prabhupada's, but no one became a devotee of Krishna. Some philosophers could appreciate something, but to become pure devotees of Krishna, that wasn't possible. But when Prabhupada's purports came to accompany the Bhagavad Gita translation, then, like a miracle, so many devotees started coming, joyfully performed. Sasukam Kartamavaya. As Krishna, what a wonderful verse. Raja Vijja Rajaguyam Pavitam Idam Uttamam Pratyaksha Bhagavan Dhamyam Sasukam Kartamavaya. This is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. And is realized through direct perception, and it is joyfully performed. So that was demonstrated. In other words, Prabhupada as the Guru demonstrated how Krishna consciousness was joyfully performed. The Vedantas, armchair philosophers, they could never awaken bhakti in the hearts of anyone, even themselves. They don't have it. Simply speculating, dry speculation. It's not bhakti. Vedeshu durlabham durlabham bhakto. One can go on scholarly studying Vedas for thousands of lifetimes, but he won't, without bhakti, he won't get the fruit. Sukham kartamavya. So whenever we read something in the Shastra, we confirm it. We confirm it with Super Soul, because in our best moments, we are inclined to do the right thing. Sometimes the question comes up, is man inherently good or is he inherently bad? Well, first of all, he's not inherently a man, he's inherently a spirit soul. So, but as a spirit soul, he's inherently good, but when he thinks he's a man, then he's inherently not good. But when because everyone's contaminated. Last night someone asked the question, what if someone just acts as a good person, he may not be Krishna conscious, but he just acts as a good person, doesn't harm anyone, this and that. Can he achieve perfection? The problem is we're already bad. It's too late. It's too late to just act as a good person. We're already contaminated inside and out. Anyone who thinks that they're a good person is not being honest, or they're just bewildered. A good person doesn't have any bad thoughts, doesn't have any bad deeds, bad desires, bad activities, so it's too late. Now we need the process, the purification process, the Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is not optional. As if one was completely pure and now he'll just go on purely. No, we're in the material world, we're not pure. The water that comes from the rain clouds, when it hits the ground, it gets muddy. Then it has to be filtered and re-purified. So we've already hit the ground. We've hit the earth. Well, who would understand Bhagavad Gita verses without Prabhupada's purports? Even though the scholars, they were able to perceive there's something there in the Bhagavad Gita, but they couldn't get it perfectly. Sometimes the spiritual master is compared to eyeglasses. When we want to see some beautiful object, but our eyes are defective, it all comes out blurry. But if we have perfectly calibrated eyeglasses, then it becomes clear, and the beautiful object is observable, I can see it. And my relationship with the observable object, beautiful object, is enhanced by the presence of the eyeglasses. The eyeglasses, although they're transparent via media, they're actually bringing me closer to the object. So there's no blockage. If we're afraid to take instructions from the spiritual master, thinking that we're going to get some distortion, we're an illusion, because we're already distorted. We're the ones that can't see. We're the ones that have the defective vision. And what it means is, if we don't want a spiritual master between ourselves and Super Soul or Krishna, it means we're content with our blurry vision. We like that. We don't really want to see. Too lazy or too bewildered. So there's no competition between the Guru and Krishna. If there's competition, for example, if the Guru, like the commentator, says, when Krishna says, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your homage unto me, etc. And if the commentator said, it is not to the person, Krishna, that we must surrender, but to the unborn within Krishna, that's competition. He's competing with Krishna's instruction. It's a different instruction. Therefore, he's not a guru. He's disqualified. As soon as he says something different than Bhagavad Gita or the Shastra or the Sadhus, just like there was one associate of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was a learned scholar, but he dared to write a tika, and he said, he presented to Lord Chaitanya that this tika, this commentary, I've surpassed Sridhar Swami's commentary. I don't accept it, I have something better. So Lord Chaitanya commented that one who doesn't accept the Swami is a prostitute. Swami means also husband. So a wife who doesn't accept the husband, she's a prostitute. So Lord Chaitanya didn't accept. He rejected that commentary because he had not followed the predecessor acharyas. He dared to go beyond them. Maryada Vyatikrama. One who tries to jump over the immediate acharya becomes guilty of making an offense. Just like Rupa Goswami, the 6 Goswamis, they're acharyas. They're the original disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Lord Chaitanya gave his instructions, and he empowered them to disseminate that knowledge and to explain it. Nana Shastra Vicharana Kirpano Saddharma Samstapako. With so many references from the Shastra. Then it becomes perfect. If someone says, I feel that Super Soul is directing me, everyone can say that. But it has to be confirmed. If you're being directed by Super Soul, then how is it the same as the scriptural injunctions? It has to be supported. If it's not supported, then it won't be accepted. Otherwise one becomes a prakriti sahaja. He takes devotional service very lightly, cheaply. He doesn't appreciate the scriptures. In fact, prakriti sahajas, they're not very much inclined towards most scriptures, certainly Bhagavad Gita or Upanishads. They find these things, they think they're for the lesser devotees. And for themselves, who are very advanced, they just want to hear rasa tattva. Rasa lila pastimes. So, but Lord Chaitanya quoted from all these scriptures. He quoted from Bhagavad Gita, from so many different sources. Even Krishna, as the Supreme Guru, is quoting from Vedanta Sutra. Therefore, a guru will support his statements from Shastra. The sadhus support their statements from Shastra. And if we have some realization, we should check and see if it's confirmed. It's like even Lord Chaitanya, he wanted to go to Vrindavan. Now shastrically, he knew that going to Vrindavan is auspicious. Therefore he wanted to go. He said, naturally as a Vaishnava I want to go. But before he went, he presented it to the sadhus. Advaitacharya, Nityananda, Srivasacharya, so many sadhus. He said, my dear sadhus, I have a desire to go to Vrindavan. With your permission I can go. And they said, well, not just now. Wait till after Rath Yatra, wait till after Dol Yatra. Then, because they didn't want him to go. He wouldn't go. He's his independent Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the Guru. He's a sannyasi. Everything. Still, he wouldn't go without their permission. And only when they gave their permission, I think it took a few years before they finally gave permission, did he actually go to Vrindavan. That's how much he valued the opinion of the sadhus. So we could take advantage of all these items together. Otherwise, if we just act on super soul, we may be listening to our mind, who's impersonating the super soul. We may be getting direction that's not beneficial. So it should be confirmed. I wrote a letter to Prabhupada about a service that I was supposed to be doing in Rath Yatra. And he wrote back, he said, yes, try your best and Krishna will help you. So that's how it works. In other words, he had given some instruction. Now the disciple was supposed to try to execute that instruction. And Super Soul would help. He would give further intelligence how to carry out that. Dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayam tesham nityabhyuktam. To those who are constantly devoted and worshiping with love, I give the understanding. But are we always constantly devoted and worshiping with love? That's questionable. Therefore, we have to consult. Sometimes the question with Prabhupada would pose the question that someone would argue. Well, Arjuna was fortunate because he was present with Krishna directly. But now we don't have Krishna present, therefore how can we know what to do? And Prabhupada said the Guru is present. So there's no difference. He's the representation, representative. Well, these are some ideas on this topic. Maybe if there's any questions, we can discuss further.
Can be some situation that, like maybe some very simple situation, and you don't need like this approved from Sadhu and Shastras.
Maybe give an example. Whether to eat 10 gulab jamuns or 5. I don't need super. No, you need super soul even for that. And you need Shastra. Because if you go on your feelings, you may eat 10. Because it tastes good. But Vacha Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam. Jiva Vegam. Jiva Vegam means the urges of the tongue. Mita Bhuk, one of the 26 qualities of a devotee is he's a moderate eater, frugal eater. So eminent scriptures are needed there. Otherwise, we can't do anything without Shastra Chakshusha. We have to see through the eyes of Shastra. If we see through our own eyes, our eyes are defective. What can we see? Can you show me God? You can't see God with your present eyes. So every act will be guided. But anyway, you give an example. I kind of interjected an example, but can you give an example?
No, for me was enough. It's like cannot be more simple than the gulab jamuns.
Yeah, innocent, but it's not always innocent. Nothing's innocent. Even appreciating Radharani's beauty. Be careful, it's not necessarily for you to appreciate her beauty separate from Krishna. You may say, well, isn't Radharani beautiful? Wait a minute, it's not for you to be appreciating her beauty separately from Krishna. Radha Krishna, that's beautiful. Because there's danger. Prabhupada says in the Krishna book that if one even in his mind thinks of some kind of mundane enjoyment with the gopis, it's an abominable, I forget how Prabhupada said, it's pretty heavy. It's a heavy statement, something like, wouldn't it be better to drink poison than to entertain such illicit thoughts? So, even the seemingly nicest thing can easily become contaminated through our eyes, through our contaminated mind. How can we trust our eyes or our contaminated mind? Don't trust your mind. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, for one whose mind is uncontrolled, super soul, for one whose mind is controlled, the super soul is already reached. But if the mind is not controlled, then the super soul is far away, you won't be able to get super soul. So how many of us have our minds under control? How can we assume then that we're always acting under Supersoul? Therefore, the guidelines of the scriptures are essential. Shastra Chakshusha. See through the eyes of the scripture. Don't see through your own eyes. Just like, here's an example for you. Perfect example to answer your question. Bharat Maharaj. Bharat Maharaj was a very, very exalted personality. Son of Rishabdev, Emperor of the world, so many good qualifications. Good. And he had retired, and now he was going to the forest, as Kshatras do, to perfect their lives and to prepare for going back to Godhead. So in that state, he was doing his duties, his meditation, whatever he was doing. And it so happened that he was near a sacred river, and suddenly a lion roared, and a pregnant deer became so frightened that she jumped into the water in fear of the lion. And she had a miscarriage, the baby came out prematurely. The mother died, and the baby deer was floating slowly down the river. So Bharat Maharaj saw this, and he thought, well, I have to naturally. This poor, was it a fawn? The poor fawn has no mother. He saw what had happened, so he compassionately picked up the fawn from the river and nursed it to life and took care of it. But he continued to take care of the fawn, and he became attached to it. He became so attached that it completely interrupted and overwhelmed his devotional practices. It became a complete distraction. And Prabhupada commented that the reason this happened is he didn't consult with his spiritual master. Had he consulted, do you think it's okay for me to be so attached to this fawn? The fawn is, while I'm doing my worship, my puja, the fawn comes up and nuzzles, and is that okay? Guru would say, no, why are you keeping this fawn? But he didn't consult. Therefore, the attachment grew, and it was based on some nice sentiment. Someone's attached to a dog out of sentiment. Someone's attached to a cat out of sentiment. Someone's attached to his land of birth. Boma Ijadi, he worships his land of birth. When he hears his song, the national anthem, tears come to his eyes. These are nice sentiments. Cares about his country, cares about his family, when he thinks about his family members. But when Arjuna was thinking about his family members and feeling himself really pious, and tears were flowing from his eyes, he was so much love and affection. He was even willing to give up his kingdom so that his relatives would be happy. Krishna said, what kind of nonsense are you talking? Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. While speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Krishna didn't accept his nice sentiments. And Arjuna was so advanced. From the royal family, his father was King Indra, mother Queen Kunti, etc. Still, he was misled by his sentiments. So what to speak of us? We can easily be misled by our sentiments at every second. Therefore we have to remember that verse. Commenting on, which verse was it? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. In commenting on a particular verse, you can, Vyavasayatmika buddhi, that's right. Controlling the mind, he said. His comment was, therefore the instructions of the spiritual master should be the very life of the disciple. And if it's his life, it's everything. There's nothing else. Your words, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Aikya. Words of the spiritual master. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete. Make them one with my heart, one with my very life. Words from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master. So, there's no difference. But we need the spiritual master is not optional, it's required. And then we'll be able to understand scriptures, we'll be able to understand the Shastras and the Sadhus and the Super Soul. All. And without the Guru, won't be able to understand any of them. Not the Shastras, not the Sadhus, not the Super Soul. It's like trying to cross the sea, cross the ocean in a boat without a rudder. Doesn't work. Just go around in circles. Other questions?
You mentioned about instinct and how the birds are getting the intelligence of what to do from the super soul. And my question is, when we think of the subtle body as the mind, the intelligence and false ego, so just wondering what the difference between the intelligence and the super soul, like if the super soul is giving the intelligence how to do things, is all of the intelligence in life coming from the super soul? Or does the soul have its own intelligence and then the super soul is giving specific directions? If that makes sense.
Real intelligence from the super soul is surrender to me. Give up all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. That's the real instruction. The intelligence he is giving to the birds how to find a worm, that's ordinary intelligence for a foolish bird. Because that's as much as the bird can understand. And the bird appreciates a little bit a higher reality when he finds the worm through his intelligence. So that's part of the training process. It's a slow training process. Going through 8,400,000 species and learning how some higher, there's something higher giving me my food, anamaya, pranamaya, anamaya. It's like when you see even an insect, when he falls down or something like that, he immediately, shakes it off and makes sure all of his faculties are working. He gets his antennas cleaned up, and then he's ready to go again. He trusts. Even when he's not in good position, he trusts his nature-given faculties. So he's getting some realizations. They're adding up, little realizations. Even in he's not very capable of getting so much deep realization, but it all adds up. So that when one gets to the human form, he's supposed to be ready now to logically accept that there is a super soul, there is a higher intelligence, and he should surrender to Krishna. He can remember all the miserable conditions. Maybe not remember them all directly, but some kind of remnant is there of the suffering that he's gone through. So there's different types of intelligence Krishna reciprocates. Because the bird is not surrendering to Krishna, he just gets worms. That's the best intelligence Krishna gives him. But when someone wants to surrender to him, Brahmande Brahmite Kono Bhagavan Guru Krishna Prasade Bhai Bhakti Lata Bij, then Krishna sends him Guru. That's the best mercy from Krishna. And if one doesn't accept the Guru, then he's not accepting Bhagavad Gita. Tatvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanina svatarsh tatvadarsh. Okay.
Bharat Maharaj got entangled because he didn't consult with the Guru, or a spiritual master. I was just wondering, in his situation, he was in the forest and he was, away from civilization. Where was his Guru?
It's a difficult process. Going to the forest, retiring to the forest. Yes, because we're so susceptible to be misled. It's like the city is the mode of passion, the forest is the mode of goodness. It's a mode of goodness, but even in the mode of goodness, one can be misled. Therefore, to live in a temple is transcendental. It's better than living in the forest. So he went to the forest, that was good, but would have been better to go to the temple. So when we think about going to the forest, or going off and chanting in the forest, we can't imitate Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur could live in a cave, in a solitary cave, and still. But if we try to live in a solitary cave and chant, or go to the Himalayas and meditate, therefore better for us to live in the temple, where there's a good association. And we can take instructions from senior Vaishnavas also, who are representatives of the spiritual master. They may have become more advanced in understanding the instructions of the spiritual master, or they may be instructed to act as his representative. I remember I got a letter from Prabhupada and he said that you should all follow such and such. He was the GBC man. He said he's guiding you all. So Prabhupada was saying there's no need to write to me for many things, just check with such and such devotee. So that instruction, that's as good as any other instruction. And that's That's how Prabhupada set up ISKCON. It's set up in that way that his will is manifest through his books, through his purports, through the management system that we have, through the sadhus, through the sannyasis, through the GPC, through the president, through the Vaishnavas, through the brahmanas. All these things. In this way, it's through the holy dhams, through the acharyas. It's a very elaborate system of making sure that we're on the right track, that we don't get deviated. And it works. It's working. The Krishna conscious movement is expanding all over the world. If a guru has to be tested, if he has to be considered empowered by Krishna, then certainly a movement like this is growing. Of course our test will be, we can't become too proud, because our test will be how we can keep the standards pure and not deviate. That's over time, especially Kali Yuga, the influence will be, the outside influence will be necessarily to degrade. So it will take a great positive effort on our part to make sure that we don't become degraded, that the instructions don't get contaminated. If left to themselves, if we let them go, very easily they'll become contaminated. Prabhupada said that before coming to Krishna consciousness, we were more or less in rubbish consciousness, and we can very easily get into that state again. It's not difficult. All we have to do is just ignore some of the instructions, and immediately we become contaminated. It takes a conscious effort. Someone was asking recently if after some time we take to Krishna consciousness, but how do we keep the inspiration and this and that? And the answer is that we have to keep trying to increase, to advance. We can't become complacent at some point. Now I've done enough austerities. Now I've done enough study. Now I've done enough service. It's time for retirement. No retirement. Keep learning every day. Keep preaching. Keep cleaning. Just like you can't say, well, I cleaned this body enough. Cleaned the house enough. I already cleaned it so many times. I'm going to retire from cleaning. Then it just becomes overwhelmed. Heart becomes, again, dirty. You have to continue cleaning. Not that I chanted so many times. My heart should be clean by now. Even if your heart's somewhat clean, the material energy is so dirty that it can flood it over in one day. You have to keep chanting. Keep paying obeisances, even though we've done it so many times. Haven't I done it enough? Haven't I shown my sincerity enough? Sometimes, in dealing with new devotees, we try to gently give them some advice. And they say, oh, wait a minute, obviously I'm sincere, otherwise I wouldn't still be here. That's an answer we hear a lot. Obviously I'm sincere, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Yes, there's some sincerity, that's true, but we need more sincerity. in order to make sure that we continue to stay here and that we continue to make advancement, we need more sincerity. More sincerity than we have presently. So we have to try for that. That means, again, hearing from the spiritual master. Sometimes devotees say that spiritual masters, I don't like reading the purports because they're so much repetition. You're not this body, you're not this body. I've heard it so many times. But whenever we feel sense desires, it means we're still thinking we're the body. So we need to hear it and to contemplate it from different angles. Any other questions?
Is it that according to the advancement we can hear Paramatma more and more, or is it that we always have to refer to Sadhu, Guru, Shastra, and especially if one becomes Guru also at some point, Guru is the manifestation of Paramatma, so, but at the same time it is said that Guru is not an independent authority, he is still bound by Sadhu, Guru, Shastra, so how does that work? Is it always that safe process that we just refer to Sadhu, Guru, Shastra throughout our life, or is there a time? I mean, it is said also liberated so he can hear directly Krishna. Prabhupada also said that there'll be a day you can talk to Krishna face to face. On the other hand, someone may be also crazy and thinking that he is talking to Krishna face to face, where he's just...
The courts are full of them. Why did you do this? Why did you kill a man? Jesus told me to. Yeah. God told me to. God told me to rid the world of the demons. So we have to be careful. But yes, the answer to the first question is, as one becomes more advanced, does he become more attuned to hearing Super Soul? Yes, definitely. And that's observable in his performance of devotional service. You can just see a pure devotee. Every step he takes, Super Soul guided, Super Soul inspired. That means he's always remembering the instructions of the spiritual master. That's what it means. It doesn't mean, forget the guru. It's just me and Super Soul now. No, he's not thinking like that. He's thinking, Prabhupada told me this, my spiritual master told me this. My spiritual master was... The Christians have a saying, what would Jesus do? What is it? They do a kind of an acronym. I guess it will be WWJD or something like that. WWJD, what would Jesus do? So their ideas, in every circumstance, they try to remember what Jesus would do and they try to act like that. But that's okay, but better would be what did Jesus say to do? What did the Guru say? I may not be able to do what he did in every circumstance, but if he gave some instruction, then that's my guiding light. So yes, one who's very advanced means he's advanced in understanding the instructions of the spiritual master. Therefore the Super Soul's already reached. He controls his mind. Why does he control his mind? Because Krishna says to control the mind, Guru says to control the mind. He controls the mind, now Super Soul's reached. Now, when one is in that state, then he's in very safe position. He doesn't allow his senses to go here and there, his mind. He doesn't trust his mind. Unless it's confirmed. And he consults. It's like Lord Chaitanya consulted with the other devotees. So we may have some idea, especially before doing anything important, we should consult, making any important decision. Consult with the devotees.
So the more advanced the devotee becomes, the more he realizes that there's no difference between the instructions from within and the instructions from without. From the spiritual master and the super soul, that they're both the same.
Right.
He gets realization that they're actually the same.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Yasya deve parabhaktir yata deve tatagaro tasyaite katita hyanta prakashante mana. One who has implicit faith in both Guru and Krishna, to him all the imports of the Vedas are automatically revealed. So both, Guru and Krishna, not one. I just trust Guru. There are those who trust Guru without Krishna, and they get misled. And there are those who think they're trusting Krishna without Guru, and they become misled. So therefore, implicit faith in both is required. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.